All right, first story of the day.
Jim.
I haven't watched it yet, but I've read the headline. Voter suppression doesn't involve long lines any more than long lines at Disneyland or ride suppression. That's a lot to unpack there, but we're going to attempt to do that. Okay. Long lines at Disneyland are ride suppression because if there's a long line, you're more likely than not going to wait on that line to do the thing that's going to take 30 seconds. You will move on to another ride that probably has a shorter line. And from there, you will then probably come back when the line is not as long. If the ride closes early, you've missed your opportunity. Therefore, the amount of people who choose not to go on that ride because the line was long, don't get to go on that ride, period. The correlation is almost perfect. Yes, if you waited in the line, you might have had a chance, but even some of the people who were on that line didn't go because the ride closed. So long lines at Disneyland are ride suppression. So I wonder what he possibly could have said here that's different.
Crow explicitly created a separate system of law for Black Americans and treated them as inferior. There's nothing in the law like that. That's not only an overstatement, it's just an outright lie. But, says Jamel Hill, all of corporate America should resonate to the lie. The law imposes new voter identification requirements for absentee ballots. Well, clearly that's racist. I mean, you mean you have to show that you are who you say you are when you vote absentee? If you can explain to me how that's racist, I'm willing to hear it. Identification requirements for absentee ballots. Well, clearly that's racist. America should resonate to the lie. The law imposes new voter identification requirements for absentee ballots. Well, clearly that's racist. I mean, you mean you have to show that you are who you say you are when you vote absentee? If you can explain to me how that's racist, I'm willing to hear it.
Okay. Now, I'm going to do this off the top of my dome. And I didn't want to do that today because I felt like today was the day I wanted to go into, okay, so we're going to take a couple seconds out and just simply Google it. Because if I could Google it, he can Google it. I don't want to do it like that. I don't want to do an article. We'll do ACLU. That's fair enough. Voter identification laws are part of an ongoing strategy to roll back decades of progress on voting rights. Okay, if you agree with that, then you already knew that. And if you don't agree with that, you're going to look for reasons why not to agree with it. So you wouldn't have already agreed with it. 34 states have identification requirements. 7 states have strict photo ID laws. No exceptions. Voter ID laws deprive many voters of their right to vote, reduce participation, and stand in direct opposition to our country's trend of including more Americans in the democratic process. Many Americans do not have one of the forms of identification states acceptable for voting. These voters are, like some places are, okay, I can use real world examples from this that I know of. Some places are like, because it just happened to me. Oh, some places are like, oh, you need your vote ID card. This card that you get in New York City. Yeah, it's in New York City. I think our voting ID laws are a little bit more wider than that. But the only thing they asked me for was my vote registration card. They didn't ask me for like my identification card or whatever. That's probably because they have a picture of me on file, blah blah whatever. Afterwards, they asked me for my state ID. I did not have my state ID. I only have my learner's permit. So that was an issue. Things like that. Like if you lose your ID and the DMV takes it a while, God forbid you lose your ID on things like that. Like you can prove your identity in more than one ways. And that's very easy for a certain county to be like, oh, you can't vote here because of this or that. 11% of U.S. citizens or more than 21 million Americans do not have government-issued photo identification. Obtaining ID costs money. Even if ID is offered for free, voters must incur numerous costs, such as paying for birth certificates to apply. That's the other part. Like, and then you got to go here, there, and there. And if you're already like low income and you need the job, let's say you're working 2 shifts and like taking off a shift, and your boss is like, no, I can't do it. You schedule an appointment. Yes, you can go down any day. Sometimes they're open on Saturdays, but if it's long or you don't get seen or there's an issue or you need to go here, there, and you don't know the process, you'd be surprised how many people don't know how to get your birth certificate or your social security card. Like, a lot of people don't know, even though that's Googleable. That plays into it because the majority of the people who don't know generally are poor. And in the general poor bracket, most exist minorities. So there is a factual representation of this argument. The combined cost of document fees, travel expenses, waiting time, $75 to $175. Depending on where you at, because I know transit's different, but I'd say around $75. That's about right. The travel required is often a major burden on people with disabilities, the elderly, or those in rural areas without access to a car, public transportation. In Texas, some people in rural areas must travel approximately 170 miles to reach the nearest ID office. I don't know about Texas, but I know that like out in Long Island, that should exist. So I'm not even going to go that far. I know upstate, in the places I've been, like we were trying to drive to the doctor's office, and that was like a 25-minute drive. Like, minority voters disproportionately lack ID. Okay, discriminatory, not racist. Okay, I think that instead of reading this entire thing, we're gonna go with this because I think that answers his question a little bit more. But he's using hyperbole again because Ben Shapiro only knows hyperbole. He is a Weasley little guy, and I don't understand how he still has an audience just splouting this shit out. But there. Yes, Mr. Ben Shapiro, I have proved to you that voter ID laws are, in fact, discriminatory, at least racist at best.
Anyone? Bueller?
Hey, that's me.
It limits the use of ballot drop boxes. Oh, you mean like ballot drop boxes where people could just stuff the ballot box or take ballots out of the ballot box?
Okay, that's conjecture.
Oh, you mean like ballot drop? Anyone?
Hold on.
Bueller? It limits the use of ballot drop boxes. Oh, you mean like ballot drop boxes where people could just stuff the ballot box or take ballots out of the ballot box?
That's conjecture. That's not an actual argument. I get it. I know the guy is not like creating policy, but his words do echo as like, oh shit, as like points that people will use to discuss ideologies and ideas. That's why like the political, I don't want to blame it on like little people like this, but he's not little. Like, he gets on talk shows. Candace Owens repeats what he says. Other Republicans repeat what he says. Like, okay, that's conjecture. Does that happen? Probably not. Does it happen if it were to happen? Does it happen on a wide enough scale that it could tip an election? No. Therefore, no. Like, if you wanted to make a point about the limit of ballot drop boxes, I could make that same point about people who count the votes. See, you're pushing now, you finally pushed the big lie. He did it, but like, this is one of those subtle, you gotta really like, Ben Shapiro isn't that type of guy. He doesn't believe in the election fraud stuff. Even though you know he's explicitly said it, these are the dog whistles that you gotta pay attention to. And a lot of people don't pay attention to them because how would you get that? You would listen to it and be like, that's a dumbass reason. No, that's a dog whistle. Oops.
It hands state officials more power over local elections. Even before the legislation passed, many voters of color in Georgia faced hours-long queues at the polls. By the way, voter suppression doesn't involve long lines.
What does voter suppression involve then, Ben?
Any more than long lines at Disneyland are ride suppression. You know what voter suppression is? Voter suppression is where you don't get to vote.
Are you doing this on purpose? Voter suppression is where you don't get to vote. I already did the Disneyland thing. Like, are you serious? You run a newspaper, a news station, a thing?
Making those waits even more arduous, the new law bans giving food and water to people in line to vote. That's not even true. It bans giving any gift to people in line when they are within 150 feet of the polling place. You can bring water with you. There are people outside who can give you water. This is just not true.
All right, and we're going to break down his last point. Just reading through it. We decided to fact check, blah, blah, blah. No person shall solicit votes in any manner or by any means, nor method, nor shall any person distribute or display any campaign material, nor shall any person give, offer to give, or participate in the giving of any money or gifts, including but not limited to food and drink, to an elector, nor shall any person solicit signatures for any petition, nor shall any person other than election officials discharging their duties establish or set up any tables or booths in which ballots are being cast. That's true. Then. So he's lying. He's a Weasley little lie. He's lying. He uses this first part, but it literally says including, because this wasn't included in there, including but not limited to food and drink. And it does, within 150 feet of the outer edge of any building within which polling place is established, within any polling place, or within 20 feet of any voter standing in line to vote at any polling place. So you can't give food and water to people who are outside waiting to vote. That's what it says. Holy shit. The only kernel of truth is that the law has a sentence which allows poll workers to make available self-service water from an unattended receptacle to an elector waiting in line to vote. But just because poll workers can make self-service water available doesn't mean they're required to come up with any way to make water accessible to voters in every line at polling state. Also, people can hand out water or food to voters outside the 150-foot and 25-foot boundaries. We rate the statement mostly false. I don't get it then. So it's true? I don't get it. Oh, mostly false? I don't get it. Is it because, are they talking about a post specifically? I should have read the thing. Oh, well, I read the thing. I got the point. He's lying. Great. Awesome. Another Ben Shapiro, beautiful take on Earth.